Hello there and welcome along to what has rapidly become my most requested rose review of all time. And when you see this particular rose up close and personal in a moment, you'll know why. Widely available in the UK through Europe and most importantly to the American market. Introduced in 2015, this very handsome rose is the Ancient Mariner. Forming a shrub that is very handsome and well proportioned, all coming together in a really nice package. So introduced in 2015, the Ancient Mariner is available as a shrub and most importantly as a tree or standard rose, which it works really quite nicely as. As a shrub rose, it's going to reach around 4 feet by 4 feet, sometimes a little larger, and this one is suitable for growing not only in full sun but also partial shade, making it really versatile and working well wherever you plant it. Its habit is quite upright but also quite wide at the same time. It's difficult to describe, but if you're familiar with the growing habit of golden celebration, you'll understand what I'm talking about. You get these fairly upright stems with a lovely arch on them that bear these really quite large flowers that are borne not only individually but also in quite large sprays. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 flowers at a time, each one measuring around 3 to 3.5 inches across. They're really quite large. They're loosely cupped on the outside, so there is a bowl of petals around the outer edge, keeping the bloom really nice and tidy in the early stages. But as it fully opens out, you get the most interesting, let's turn it around so you can get it there. You get that most interesting 6-point star shape to the flower in the center. It's really quite captivating in its look. They open from sugar pink buds. You can see this one here, really quite dark. There's a deep ruffling to the outer edges, which I haven't seen on any other of the roses I've reviewed so far. You can see lots of ruffled texture to that bud itself, well before it's actually even opened. They're all crinkly and curled round, which is really quite interesting. Again, when they fully open, you've got that little pointed edge to the outer edges of those cuppings on the outside edge. They open to a mid-dark pink. If you're familiar with the rose Sceptred Isle from David Austin Roses, very similar in colour. And again, as the flower completely blows out from that mid-pink to this lovely dusty apple blossom white, very much like Mill on the Floss, you'll get that heavily painted edge to the edge of the petals. So lighter in the centre with a very dark edge to it, giving a nice antique look to the flower. Much like Sceptred Isle, there is also a lovely collection of golden stamens right in the very center of the flower there. So as it opens out in full sun, it's really quite lovely, almost sort of smiling and looking up to you in the light. It's very attractive indeed. The foliage is dark green, quite tough and waxy in its appearance, quite coarse. There is a small amount of mossing and barbing to the outer edges of the foliage and also down the back of the leaf axil. So do be careful if you choose to cut this one and bring it into the house. It is one that cuts particularly nicely. I say the stems are nice and strong. The thorn count is varied. You can see it does have some thorns, but they are tiny and knock off really easily. If you want to debarb those, cut this and bring this into the house. The flowers are more than capable of keeping themselves upright, and you can see that lovely habit, as I say, upright stems with that lovely graceful arching stem to them, which means that the Ancient Mariner makes a really handsome, very well proportioned shrub, and also more importantly a handsome and very well proportioned tree or standard rose. This one, I say, is suitable for growing in full sun and in partial shade, making it really nice and versatile. If you're considering growing, for instance, Olivia Rose Austin as an informal hedge, maybe you want to have a look at the Ancient Mariner. This one's fragrance is ever so slightly warmer, spicier, and in my opinion, a little bit stronger than Olivia Rose Austin. So this might make a better substitute if you're looking at something for an informal hedge. This one is suitable for growing in zones 4 through 11 and has a petal count of around 160, so it's really quite high. So the blooms are formed around 3 to 3.5 inches across. It really is a very handsome shrub indeed, and this one really has captivated my attention. The repeat is also really good, so if you're looking for a hard-working rose in the garden that's going to give you not only blooms to cut but also really something quite showy on the plant that's not too heavily cupped so it doesn't ball up if it gets particularly wet. This one opens whether it's wet or not. Like I say, the petals are quite thick, they're not paper thin like some of the other roses with that deep bowling around the outside, so even when it does get wet it does open up quite nicely. So petal count of 160, so they are quite high. Nice, blousy, showy flowers which cut really nicely and open whether they're wet or dry to reveal a really nice, interesting shape. I mean, say, look at the formation and coloration in the center of that one, blowing out to this lovely dusty pink. It really is quite captivating. Starting flowering somewhere in a region of about the 2nd or 3rd week of June. This particular plant produces flowers not only individually but also in small sprays with 3, 4, 5 flowers born on a stem, so you can go through them and deadhead them or cut the larger ones if you want to bring them into the house. But this particular plant's only been in the ground for just under a year. The repeat is really quite strong. I've only cut around half of the flowers on this particular shrub to bring you a reel or a still later on as well, but the repeat is already emerging from the very base of the plant already. Lovely scarlet red growth tips emerging from right at the very base of the plant, throwing up nice long leaders with lovely little buds on the top already. And it has to say, they haven't even finished the first flush, so it's going to be a very, very strong repeat flowering rose. The fragrance on this one I think is really quite astonishing. It's not particularly strong, it's mid in its strength. I'm going to be giving it a 5 out of 10 stars, which is more than acceptable. It's very difficult to describe. In the early forms of the flower, when they first open, when they're this lovely mid pink colour, the fragrance is really quite zesty. It's very floral, it's very citrusy in its tones, and by the time the flower ages within a couple of days to this sort of colour, and it's just starting to go over, it takes on that wonderful mirth fragrance. So if you are familiar with growing sceptred isle as a plant, you'll understand the tones that I'm talking about. It's woody, it's warm, it's spicery and peppery. It's got notes of sandalwood and cloves and cedar to it, which is really lovely. It's very warm, so on a warm summer's day, the Ancient Mariner really does carry nicely on the wind. All round a really lovely rose from David Austin Roses, which has a multitude of uses in the garden, not only as a statement shrub, but also as an informal hedge, or maybe if you are going to treat yourself to something extravagant, as a tree or shrub, or a tree or standard rose. Makes a really nice one. This is the Ancient Mariner, introduced in 2015 and has become my most requested David Austin rose review of all time. So I do hope you enjoy it. Do feel free to leave a comment below, like, follow and share. I'll see you all again very soon. Take care now. Bye bye.